And we're going to next move to Senator Reedy.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Senator Reedy, on Senate Bill 268. And we've got no designated sponsor panelists, but we do have one in-person favorable if you want.
They can go after mine, that's fine.
Okay, so do your thing and then we'll take the witnesses in person. There's
Thank
some
you.
virtual and then there's some unfavorable, et cetera. Okay, Senator Reedy, Senate Bill 268.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, it's great to see you and be here again with you all. I'm here to present Senate Bill 268, and it's a discussion. We've had some in this committee before. Some of you may be new. With amendments, it'll be identical to the bill that Delegate Crosby has in the House as well, working on this together. Senate Bill 268 would signal Maryland's desire to remain on daylight savings time year round. To date, 42 states are entertaining or have passed legislation on this issue, while two, Arizona and Hawaii, only observe their respective standard times. It's an issue that's gaining a lot of traction at the national level. A bill passed the United States Senate last year to do it. It did not move in the House, but it's been reintroduced. There's been a lot of discussion about how to do it and the compacts that would take to do so, because obviously there is concern about making sure states, one standalone state doing it can be challenging. So we want to do it together. Just for a history lesson, daylight savings time was initially implemented during World War I to save energy, but it stuck around after the war. Americans liked it at the time. It was reintroduced year round during World War II for some of the same energy saving reasons. But with technological advances that we've had, certainly since that time, there is no significant energy savings associated with the time change process. And the popularity of daylight time amongst Americans has made this move, has really created a national movement for doing this. Twice the federal Uniform Time Act, there's been two times that the Uniform Time Act has been amended, both extended the daylight savings time. And so there's a number of health issues that are associated with and concerns that people have associated with the moving back and forth of the clock. Children, it's very difficult for children, it takes time for them to adjust. They're senior citizens, and also it's an impact on our pets as well. They don't do well with the time change. When there has been also a lot of evidence that has been put out about folks that when you're traveling home from work, having more daylight for your commute in the afternoon and evening hours can be a tremendous benefit from a safety and health standpoint. Several studies even showed that many crime incidents are lower during morning hours and peak during late afternoon and evening hours. So springing forward and staying there will give us more daylight hours during the times that people can be more active, especially outside of work. The liberty of being outside after work, enjoying daylight rather than going straight home, is beneficial even to our economy. So springing forward and staying there would benefit the state of Maryland, our economy, our roads, and put us in line with where we're moving, I think, nationally. And so with that, I would request a favorable report. And again, the amendments make it, Delegate Crosby's bill had some ways that it ties us together with some other states. So with that, Mr. Chairman, the president of this committee, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, I would ask for a favorable report and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for the sponsor, Senator Reedy? Senator Reedy, any questions? Okay, thank you, Senator Reedy. We have only one in-person favorable witness, and then we do have some virtual testimony we'll take up next. But Nicole Hanson Mundell, in person. Okay, don't see her here. Okay, we're going to go to some favorables virtual and then a few unfavorables virtual. Okay, so next up, Lisa VanBuskirk. No, I apologize. Let's go to the favorables. Matthew Riebel. I'm sorry, favorable. Then we'll go down. I apologize. He signed up favorable. Mr. Riebel, we do have you in the house here, and you've got 2 minutes.
Yes, I am here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 268 to stop the time change and keep Maryland on daylight saving time year round, pending congressional approval. Well, numerous studies in the past have shown lots of harm that is done to Americans' health every year after we spring forward. A 2015 University of Michigan study showed a 25% increase in heart attacks. A 2016 study from Austin Smith showed 5.6% rise in traffic incidents for the whole week, which is probably even higher if you look at that Monday alone. And it results in 30 deaths and $275 million in social costs per year. And Americans sleep on average 40 minutes less on the Sunday of the change than other Sundays, and no sizable effects during the fall change have been detected. And a recent study from the Journal of Clinical Medicine showed that acute myocardial infarction, or AMI, increases 5%. And there's been no evidence lately that with modern technology, changing the clock saves energy. Like Indiana increased energy use after they started daylight saving time. And for those of the Start School Later committee that say that we must go to permanent standard time and permanent daylight saving time, I argue it wouldn't matter, because I think people are going to want to settle with the sun and work and learn at the times they're comfortable with in the long term. Like if we went to permanent standard time, maybe adults would want to start work at 8 and push for high schools to start at 7:30, and Start School Later would be saying, no, we should start at 9. Permanent daylight saving time, it would be like 9. Adults would want to start working, pushing for 8:30. Start School Later would be pushing for 10. So you'd have the same amount of discrepancy either way.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Riebel. I think you submitted some written testimony as well, so we do have that. But
yeah, it's about the same, basically the same thing as what I just said.
Gotcha. Okay, well, thank you. We're going to next go to MJ Sutton, signed up favorable virtually. Are not there. Okay, so now we're going to move to some virtual unfavorables. We're going to start with Lisa VanBuskirk, virtual unfavorables. Ms. Buskirk here? Okay.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, you've got 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. I'm Lisa VanBuskirk of Start School Later, Maryland. This is my 4th year testifying before this committee in opposition to permanent daylight savings time, specifically Senate Bill 268. My written comments are longer and include a number of enclosures. What is the difference between permanent daylight savings time versus the status quo or permanent standard time at this time of year? It's the difference between sunrise on the opening day of the Maryland General Assembly being at 8:24 versus 7:24. That is the difference between if you are showing up for work on the first day of General Assembly of having a dark day to see the State House or a light day. Today's sunrise was at 6:29, 7 days into session, and the sunrise is nearly an hour earlier and the days are lengthening. But under daylight savings time, sunrise would only barely be before 7:30 a.m. Permanent daylight savings time combined with the current 2 early school start times would have an even greater negative impact on adolescent circadian rhythm, safety, health, and academics, and is contrary to the intent of previous state legislation regarding school bell times, including 2014's HB 883, 2016's HB 39, both of which were sponsored by new Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller and co-sponsored by Senator Simon Eyre. This school year, Anne Arundel County implemented new school hours aligned with expert recommendations. Last month, Howard County's Board of Education approved new start and dismissal times for the school year. This bill would negate both efforts, which is why both the Maryland Association of the Boards of Education and Anne Arundel County Public Schools has repeatedly opposed permanent daylight savings time. In regards to the amendments, Virginia Senate defeated a permanent daylight savings time bill last month. Under daylight savings times, more Maryland students of all ages would walk or wait for buses in the dark. And I encourage you to see my enclosure listing all the school systems with schools which would start before sunrise under permanent daylight savings time. If you want to lock the clock and start switching, then permanent standard time is the recommendation of health and sleep experts. Please vote for an unfavorable report on 268. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the witness? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Vice Chair Kagan.
Just a quick question for Ms. VanBuskirk. Are you still
Yes,
here?
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Reedy made the point, and it confirms what I've heard, which is there is a national movement, the number of states plus Congress acting. Can you just give us your reasoning then for why Maryland should stand in a diminishing number of states, and why we should stand not alone necessarily, but among a very small number of states?
So I
If
think
we don't take
Maryland has
action.
a history of putting health and safety at the forefront of its education and societal things. And so I believe that the recommendations of health experts is for permanent standard time and not for permanent daylight savings time. And so while Delaware, as our adjacent state, has moved to permanent daylight savings time as part of their legislation, Virginia just defeated a bill. Pennsylvania has considered both evaluations. So I don't think that it is set. When the US Senate passed the bill last year, it was by unanimous consent, which isn't really the same as unanimously voting, as you well know the difference between the various forms of approving committee legislation. So I do not think that that is set, and we tried in 1974 and were unsuccessful. I would also say that some of the other testimony can go into more detail about the state of other states moving towards permanent daylight savings time and standard time.
Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for the witness? Okay, seeing none, we'll next move to James Crabtree, unfavorable. Is Mr. Crabtree? Mr. Crabtree, oh, sorry. Well, we have Mr. He is on the list too. Is Mr. Crabtree in the queue? I apologize. Okay, I apologize. Okay, you guys are here in person. I thought you had you down virtual. Okay, Mr. Crabtree and Mr. Garrahan. Okay, I had you virtual, but you're both here in person. Sir, we're going to start with you, Mr. Crabtree, and then both of you, and then we'll take some questions. Go on, Mr. Crabtree.
Dear members of the Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify against Senate Bill 268. I'm James Crabtree, a Maryland resident and a volunteer for Save Standard Time. On the darkest days of the year, the temptation of more time to spend in the sun can be challenging to resist. In 1973, as the United States faced an energy crisis, federal lawmakers were enticed by the promise of brighter evenings and passed the same policy of permanent daylight saving time that Maryland is now considering. Then the first Monday of 1974 came when the sun rose at 8:25 a.m. in Annapolis. Even by February, 7:30 a.m. was still pitch dark. Jet blackness, as one mother described the scene at her daughter's bus stop, engulfed the nation until long after morning commuters had departed for work or school. While standard time was not due to return until October 1975, the failed experiment was ended 1 year early to spare citizens a second consecutive winter of morning misery. Scientists warn that exposure to excess evening sunlight and insufficient morning sunlight chronically worsens health, public safety, and the economy. Similarly, experts advise that humans operate ideally when the center of daylight hours roughly corresponds with civil noon, a phenomenon that only occurs when clocks are set to standard time. Introducing 1 hour of misalignment between solar time and circadian time perpetually deprives sleep, which explains all of the negative trends that are associated with daylight saving time. While all residents of Maryland will suffer from the ramifications of extending daylight saving time through the winter, I often hear this issue discussed in specific contexts of school start times. The academic day at most middle schools and high schools in Maryland already begins before the earliest time of 8:30 a.m. recommended by tens of organizations dedicated to pediatric health, forcing students to battle their own biology to arrive at their morning classes on time. Daylight saving time shifts school start times 1 additional hour earlier relative to the time of sunrise, negating all efforts to give students a healthy amount of morning sunlight before school. As a current high school student, the prospect of first seeing the sun on January mornings halfway through my first class of the day instead of during my drive to school does not particularly appeal to me. No adjustment of time can make winter feel like summer, though extending daylight saving time can make winters far more dismal. I ask anyone who's interested in keeping time honest and healthful to oppose Senate Bill 268, which seeks to redefine midnight as 1 hour before the middle of the night at the expense of quality of life and life itself. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crabtree. We'll go to the other panelists and then we'll open up questions. And then I apologize, the other two witnesses are unfavorable, but they're both virtual. But sir, tell us your name and then you've got 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senators. My name is Mike Garrahan, and I oppose SB 268. These days I reside on the wrong side of the Potomac, but my activities regularly bring me to Maryland, and your counterparts in Richmond are interested in what you decide. Most people like summer better than winter, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, the 14 hours of daylight we get in summer and the 10 hours we get in winter are facts of nature which we cannot alter. The hour daylight saving adds to summer evenings is subtracted from the mornings. We can afford to do that when daylight is abundant, but not when it is scarce. We tried it in 1974 and found the darker winter mornings unsafe. A few things have changed since then, but the human response to light and darkness has not. Morning light helps us wake up, and evening darkness helps us go to sleep. Daylight saving time moves both of those later on the clock, decreasing the duration and quality of sleep and increasing the likelihood of various mental and physical health problems. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine has led the effort to educate the public about this, and other medical professional societies concur with them, including the American Medical Association. Clock changes are not the only thing. It matters which way we end them. Also, I think midday should be 12 o'clock, don't you? If this committee amended the bill to keep standard time year-round, it could take effect without an act of Congress. It would be good for public health and safety, and I would support it. Otherwise, I respectfully ask this committee not to advance SB 268. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for our two panelists? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We're going to go to, again, our final two witnesses who signed up unfavorable, both virtual. Is JP here, Mr. P? There you are. Okay, sir, you got 2 minutes. You're signed up unfavorable.
Hello, Honorable Chair, committee members. Thank you very much for having me. My name is JP. Last name is spelled PEA. I'm the president of the nonprofit Save Standard Time. I'm asking for an unfavorable report on Senate Bill 268. My organization agrees that ending clock change would be a good idea, but we warn that permanent daylight time is a false clock, and history and science show that it is worse than the status quo of clock change. We need to end clock change with permanent standard time, which is the real clock defined from the natural world and which is best for health, safety, and education. This is not just our opinion, but the opinion of the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Neurology, the National Safety Council, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, the National PTA, Bloomberg Editorials Board, writers from Cato, Daily Wire. There really is broad support for permanent standard time in opposition to permanent daylight time. Arizona, Hawaii, and all 5 U.S. territories are on permanent standard time. Mexico recently did away with daylight saving time. Most nations on Earth are on permanent standard time. Recently, Virginia opposed permanent daylight time, and we have permanent standard time bills in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, Maine, and many other states more than ever before. We have seen a trend of initially states looking at permanent daylight time, but as the years have gone on, they have realized that permanent standard time is the better way. We tried permanent daylight time in the 1970s. It literally killed children and was reverted quickly. It was also unpopular when it was tried in World War II. It would delay the sunrise in Annapolis today to 7:30 to 8:30 in January, past 8 o'clock for 3 months, a quarter of the year. If you were to ask your constituents, do they want to set their alarm clock an hour early, get up and go to work in the dark, in a snowstorm, they're going to say, no, let us sleep. But that's what permanent daylight time would force them to do. So please, for health, safety, education, economy, oppose Senate Bill 268, ask for its amendment to standard time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions for the witness? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to our final witness on this bill signed up on favorable. We've got a Rabbi Ariel Sadwin. Rabbi, I'm going to get you in here. Okay, Rabbi, you've got 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Rabbi Ariel Sadwin from Agudath Israel, Maryland, speaking on behalf of the Orthodox Jewish communities across Maryland. Uniquely, my perspective is somewhat different, perhaps, than the previous witnesses in opposition to this legislation. Our organization has been very vocal on this issue nationwide, on this issue in many states, that aside from the concerns that are of mental health and emotional well-being of children and school concerns and safety concerns, we have a unique perspective on this. As every morning in the life of many Jews and all Orthodox Jews, especially the men, is ritual prayer in the morning, putting on the tallis and tefillin and going to synagogue and praying, and the day is not able to start until one does so. And when the morning does not start and when it's dark out until far later in the morning than we've ever experienced. It's going to put a delay on the start of the day. Daily travel times to work, to and from work are going to be modified and altered as a result of this. And this is a serious concern. While it does not impact the larger population of Maryland, it has a major impact on many thousands of households in the Orthodox Jewish communities in Maryland, and therefore we request a unfavorable report on this legislation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the rabbi? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 268. Thank you. We're going